The twin suns of Verox 9 burned hot over the red sand. Winds howled across the open wasteland, carrying dust and heat. The ground cracked beneath old metal parts, shipwrecks, and bones of forgotten creatures. It was a place where no one stayed, for long. In the middle of it all was her, Kareen. An alien girl, barely out of youth by her people's age, sat chained to a post. Her skin was pale blue, burned on the edges. Her silver hair hung in knots. Her arms and ankles were bruised from iron cuffs. The chain around her neck rattled every time she moved. She hadn't moved much. Not in hours. Not since her own team left, her behind. The last memory she had was of voices. Cold, sharp. She's useless. She'll slow us down. Leave her. We can't risk the mission. They were her companions. Warriors from her ship. Friends she had trained with since childhood, and yet they abandoned her. Kareen had tried to scream. They didn't turn back. They walked away, left her in the dust like garbage. Now she sat in silence, lips dry, eyes half closed. She didn't cry. There were no more tears left, only pain. And shame. Far in the distance, a rumble. Engines. A ship. Her eyes fluttered open. Another scavenger. Raiders? She didn't care anymore. Whether it was death or rescue, it would be better than this. The ship came closer, kicking up sand. It was old and ugly, paint peeling, engine coughing smoke. A simple cargo vessel. It landed a few meters away. The ramp opened slowly. A man stepped out. Human, wearing dusty armor and a tool belt. No soldiers, no guards. Just one man. He held a scanner in his hand, looking around the wreckage. He hadn't seen her yet. Kareen stayed still. Maybe he would leave. Joel, former mechanic, now scavenger, was looking for spare parts. His fuel core was low, and his stomach was emptier than his wallet. He didn't expect to find anything useful on this burnt-out rock until he looked left and froze. He saw her, a girl. Thin, pale, chained. He raised his blaster instantly, but she didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at him with dull, empty eyes. "What the hell?" he whispered. He walked closer, step by step. The chain rattled. Her fingers twitched barely. Joel lowered his weapon. "Are you alive?" No answer. He moved closer. Then he saw the cuffs, the bruises, the collar. He frowned. "Who did this to you?" Still no answer. He knelt down and pulled out a small flask of water. He held it out. She didn't take it, so he placed it beside her. She stared at it. After a long pause, she leaned forward and drank. Joel watched quietly. He stood up and looked around. No camps, no footprints, no guards. Whoever left her was long gone. "You alone out here?" he asked. Silence. "You speak English?" Still nothing. He sighed. "Right." He looked at the cuffs. Alien tech. Strong, locked with plasma seals. Joel had seen things like this on black market slave routes. He hated those. With a deep breath, he reached for his toolkit. "Let's get these off." The girl suddenly pulled back, weakly. Not to fight. To protect herself, Joel paused. "I'm not going to hurt you." She stared at him, suspicious, tired, afraid. He nodded slowly, then sat cross-legged in front of her. "I'll wait. You drink. You breathe. And if you want out of those chains, I'll help." He didn't speak again. He just waited. Minutes passed. Then, slowly, Kareen pushed her hands forward, shaking, surrendering. Joel smiled sadly. Good choice. It took nearly an hour to unlock the alien cuffs. Joel worked carefully, muttering to himself, trying not to damage her skin. When the final cuff clicked open, Kareen let out the softest breath. Joel stood. "You're free." She didn't run. She didn't speak. She just looked at him. Really looked at him, like she had never seen someone like him before. And maybe she hadn't. Joel pointed to his ship. "I'm heading out. You can come with me, or stay here." Still no reply. He turned and walked back to his ship. Then, behind him, footsteps, slow, careful. She followed. Not because he asked, but because for the first time in her life, someone didn't demand anything. Someone didn't leave. The door of the cargo ship hissed shut behind them. Karine stood just inside, her legs weak, her body trembling slightly. Her eyes scanned the room. Metal walls, flickering lights, crates stacked in corners. It was cold, dark, and messy. But it wasn't the cage, and it wasn't the sand. Joel walked ahead of her, tossing his toolkit onto a bench. "Welcome to the Dustwalker," he said. "Not pretty, but it flies." Karine said nothing. She didn't sit. She didn't relax. She stood like a prisoner waiting to be chained again. Joel noticed. He sighed. "I don't know who left you there," he said, opening a cabinet. "Don't care either. You're not cargo. You're not a job. You're just someone who needed help." He pulled out a wrapped food bar and a blanket, then walked over slowly and handed both to her. She didn't take them. "Still don't. Trust me," he muttered. She stared at him, not angry, not scared, just watching, like she was trying to figure him out. Joel backed away and dropped the items on a seat nearby. "Do what you want," he said. "I'll be in the cockpit." Hours passed. The ship hummed as it moved through the stars. In the cockpit, Joel checked his systems. Fuel was low, shields were weak, food supplies, barely enough. He should have dropped her at the last outpost. He should have walked away. He didn't, and now she was here, silent, watching. When he returned to the back chamber, he found her curled up on the floor, not touching the blanket or food. Joel frowned. He knelt beside her and placed the blanket over her body. She twitched, but didn't stop him. "Look," he whispered. "I don't know your name. I don't know what they did to you. But I'm not them. I don't chain people." Still, she said nothing. He stood up. "Eat something before you pass out." Then he left her alone again. The next morning, Joel woke to a strange sound. He sat up quickly. Silence. He stepped out of the sleeping cabin and stopped. Karine was sitting at the small dining bench, the blanket wrapped around her shoulders, the food bar half-eaten, but that wasn't what shocked him. She was holding a small tool, one from his bench, and she was fixing a broken sensor on the table. Joel raised a brow. "That's a delicate circuit." She didn't look up, just kept working. He walked over slowly. "You know how to fix nav sensors?" She nodded, barely. He blinked. "Well, you're already more useful than half the crew I've worked with." She placed the fixed unit on the bench and looked at him for the first time without fear. Her lips moved. One word. "Karine." Joel stared. That's your name?" She nodded again. He gave a small smile. "Nice to meet you, Karine." That was it. No handshake. No hug. But something had changed. The silence wasn't empty anymore. It was healing. Later, Joel gave her access to a small storage room, quiet, safe, with a locking door. She took it without complaint. That night she sat on the floor, staring at the stars through a small porthole. And for the first time since her team left her, she didn't feel alone. But trouble was still out there. Someone had left Karine behind, and someone might be looking for her. Joel didn't ask questions, but deep inside he knew this wasn't over. Still, he didn't walk away. He brought her water. He brought her tools. And one quiet evening, as she helped him fix a loose panel on the ceiling, Karine looked down and said softly, "You're different." Joel looked up. "Different how?" She paused, then whispered, "You stayed." The Dustwalker drifted silently through dark space. Inside, the soft hum of the ship filled the air like a lullaby. The metal creaked now and then, tired but steady, like its pilot. Joel sat in the cockpit, sipping his stale coffee, checking nearby star routes. His mind wasn't on the scanner. It was on the girl in the back, Karine. She had been aboard for 3 days now, and though she barely spoke, her eyes said everything. That morning, Joel found her already awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor of the engine bay. One of his old drones was pulled apart in front of her. "Hey," he said, walking over. "I was saving that." Karine didn't look up. She connected 2 wires with perfect precision. The drone's lights blinked once, then, steady blue. Joel raised his brows. "Well, guess you fixed it." She finally looked up, face blank. But her eyes, they sparkled, just a little. They worked together that day in silence. She didn't ask for tools. She didn't need directions. She watched. She learned. And Joel noticed something odd. Every time he glanced her way, Karine was already watching him. Not in fear, not in anger, just observing, like he was a puzzle she was still trying to solve. Later, he dropped a metal panel on his foot and cursed out loud. Karine, across the room, tilted her head. "What was that word?" she asked softly. Joel stared. "That's the one you choose to speak?" She blinked. "You said it with feeling." He chuckled. "Yeah, pain usually comes with feeling." A pause. Then, very quietly, Karine smiled. That night, Joel gave her something special. An old data pad filled with Earth pictures, oceans, trees, cities, food, animals. He left it outside her door without saying anything. She found it and sat for hours flipping through the images. She stopped on one, a picture of a human child holding a dog. She stared at it for a long time. Later, she returned the data pad to Joel's bunk with one word written on the screen. "Why?" Joel found it and sat down. He replied with one word of his own. "Family." The next morning, Karine was already in the cockpit, waiting. She began speaking more, but only when needed. Tool, left wire. Bad weld, more salt. But her eyes kept talking. When Joel was tired, she watched him with concern. When he joked, she didn't laugh, but her eyes flickered with quiet amusement. When he talked about Earth, she leaned forward, eyes full of wonder. One evening, a warning light blinked on the console. A ship approaching fast. No ID. No reply signal. Joel tensed. Could be raiders. Karine stood up, calm but alert. He looked at her. "You don't seem surprised." She said nothing, but her eyes darkened. The ship didn't attack, just scanned them, then flew away. Joel breathed again, but Karine didn't relax. He turned to her. "You know who they were, don't you?" She stayed quiet, but this time her eyes said something different. "Yes." Joel didn't push. But that night, while she sat watching the stars, he brought her a blanket again. "You don't have to tell me," he said. "But if they come back, I'll stand between you and them." She looked at him, truly looked. No words, but her eyes glistened like water under starlight. That was her answer. The next day, she started calling him by name, not you. Not human, just Joel. He acted like it was nothing, but it meant everything. Karine still didn't speak much, but she didn't need to, because when the others had turned their backs, when chains were all she knew, one human spoke through, kindness, and she answered, through eyes that had finally begun to trust again. The Dustwalker flew low over the burned hills of Varan 6, heading for a small trading outpost. Joel needed fuel. Karine needed food she could actually stomach, but something felt off. The scanners blinked, then died. Joel hit the side of the panel. Cheap junk. Karine was already on her feet, eyes scanning the window. She saw it first. A glint of metal behind the ridge, a ship, no beacon, no ID. Then, a second, and a third. Her voice was cold, quiet. "Raiders." Joel sat up straight. "You sure?" Karine didn't speak. She pointed. He saw movement, 3 bikes rushing in from the east, kicking up clouds of red dust. Then came the signal, a sharp, pulsing ping. Short-range jammer. Weapons hot. Joel's hands moved fast. He angled the ship toward the outpost, hoping to gain distance. But the Dustwalker wasn't a warship, it wasn't even fast, and Kareen knew it. "I'll try to lose them through the canyon," Joel shouted, gripping the controls. Kareen strapped herself in, her jaw clenched. Joel looked over. "If they board us, hide in the lower hatch. Don't argue." She didn't nod. She didn't agree. She just stared ahead, like something deep had been unlocked, something old, something Alari. They didn't make it far. A pulse blast hit the side of the ship. Lights flickered. Alarms screamed. Joel cursed. "We're going down!" The Dustwalker slammed into the dirt, skidding hard and throwing sparks. Metal screamed as it slid across the canyon floor. Then, silence. Dust hung in the air like fog. Joel crawled out from under a fallen panel, coughing. His side was bruised, but nothing broken. He turned fast. "Kareen!" She was already moving, not running, preparing. Raiders stormed the ship, 3 armed creatures in rust-colored armor. Their faces were hidden behind steel masks. One laughed. Well, just a junkman and his pet. Joel raised his blaster. They kicked it away easily. He staggered back, hands raised. The raiders circled him like wolves. That's when Kareen stepped from the smoke. She held one of Joel's plasma wrenches, small, but heavy. They didn't see her coming. She hit the first raider in the leg. He dropped. She spun and slammed the tool into the second's visor, cracking it. Joel grabbed the third by the arm and pulled hard, unbalancing him. Together, they fought. Not perfectly, not trained, but real Kareen moved like lightning. Her fear was gone. In its place, rage. This time she wasn't the one being left behind. This time she was protecting someone. The last raider ran. Kareen didn't follow. She stood still, panting, blood on her arm. Joel sat beside her, wiping dirt from his face. "You didn't hide," he said softly. Kareen looked at him. "No." "Why?" She didn't blink. "Because you never did." Later, after fixing a temporary patch on the hull, they sat on the ship's ramp, watching the red sun dip behind the canyon wall. Joel handed her water. She took it this time. "I didn't think you could fight like that," he said. She didn't answer for a long time. Then, "I used to fight for people who didn't care if I lived." He looked at her. "And now?" She looked at him, her voice quiet. "Now I fight for the only one who did." That night, Joel found her standing by the broken drone she had fixed. She looked up at him, holding something in her hand. It was a small, silver badge from one of the raiders marked with a strange symbol. Joel frowned. "Recognize it?" Kareen's voice dropped. "It belongs to the squad that abandoned me." Joel stiffened. "They're tracking me," she said. "Do they know you're alive?" Kareen looked out the window. "Now they do." But Joel wasn't afraid. He just placed a hand on her shoulder. "Let them come." She turned to him. This time her eyes didn't just say thank you. They said something stronger. Trust. Belonging. Fire. From this moment forward, Kareen wasn't a silent survivor. She was his shield. And for the first time, he wasn't alone either. The Dustwalker floated quietly in orbit above a small blue moon. Inside, Joel and Kareen sat across from each other in the dim glow of the ship's mess hall. A warm drink steamed in front of her, untouched. Joel leaned on the table, arms crossed, watching her carefully. Kareen hadn't spoken much since the raider attack, but something had changed in her. She didn't flinch when Joel walked near. She didn't avoid eye contact, and now, finally, she said, "You want to know what happened?" "To me?" Joel blinked, caught off guard. "I do," he said. "Only if you're ready." She nodded. Her voice was soft but steady. "I wasn't always weak. I was part of an elite recon unit. We were trained for deep void survival, first contact missions, and retrieval." Joel frowned. "So, you were special forces?" Kareen nodded. "I was chosen young. Passed every test. My captain used to call me the Silent Blade. Joel smiled a little. Sounds accurate. But Kareen's face didn't change. Everything changed on June 7. Joel leaned forward. She continued. We were ordered to recover data from a crashed vessel. It was supposed to be routine, but something was waiting for us. Joel's jaw tightened. An ambush? She nodded. Bioweapons. We fought. We lost. I was injured, badly. My neural core was damaged. My reflexes slowed. My strength dropped. They said I wasn't fit for the unit anymore. Joel looked angry now. So they just left you? Kareen's eyes lowered. Worse. They chained me. Said they would send help. They didn't. Silence filled the ship. Only the hum of the engine broke the air. Joel finally spoke. They were your team. Your people. Kareen looked up, her voice hard now. No, my people are dead. Whatever was left behind, they were cowards. Joel stood up and paced the room, fists clenched. And now they're trying to hunt you because of... What? Guilt? She shook her head. Because of what's in me. He froze. What do you mean? Kareen took a small metal ring from her pocket. It looked like a bracelet, but far more advanced. This was part of my suit. It still holds fragments of the June 7 data core. My body synced with it during the crash. That data could change everything. Joel's eyes narrowed. So they didn't just leave you behind. They knew you'd be a liability and a threat if captured. Kareen nodded slowly. That's why they want me back. Joel walked to her side and sat beside her. You know, he said. I thought I was rescuing a girl in chains. She turned to him. You were? He shook his head. No, I was rescuing a fighter. Someone with more strength than she even knew. Kareen looked away. I don't feel strong. Joel leaned in. Strength isn't never falling, it's getting back up, when no one else expects you to. She closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them again. Why do you care? Joel was quiet. Then he said, because the world left you behind, and I know what that feels like. Kareen stared at him. Joel stood and reached out a hand. Let's stop hiding. Later, Kareen sat alone in her private corner of the ship. She took out the broken chain collar Joel had cut off her neck. She had kept it all this time. Now she opened the panel beside her bunk and locked the chain inside, not to wear again, but to remember. Then she pulled a small tool from her belt and began carving something into the wall. In her own language, simple letters. One word. Free. Back in the cockpit, Joel scanned nearby space lanes. He didn't know where they were going next. But he knew one thing. Kareen wasn't just cargo anymore, she was crew. She was family. And whatever storm was coming next, they would face it together. The stars outside the Dustwalker glowed soft and still, but inside the ship, tension hung in the air like smoke. Joel leaned over the control panel, reading the silent message blinking on his screen. A tight frown formed on his face. Unmarked ship approaching. A Lari military pattern. No transponder. Kareen stood behind him, arms crossed, eyes locked on the same screen. She didn't need to see the ship. She already knew who it was. Joel turned to her. It's them, isn't it? Kareen didn't answer with words. She just stared out the window, like she had been waiting for this moment the whole time. Joel touched her shoulder. We can run. Kareen shook her head. No, they'll follow. They don't stop until they finish what they start. Joel stepped closer. You don't have to go back, you're not theirs anymore. Kareen looked down at her hand. A faint scar from the chain still showed. Then she whispered, they don't want me back because they care. They want the data. The ship outside opened a communication channel. A face appeared on the screen, a Coldelari officer with silver armor and dark, pitless eyes. Kareen Valsera, former scout, current fugitive. Surrender immediately and you will be treated with dignity. Joel scoffed. Dignity? You chained her like a dog. The officer ignored him. Kareen stepped forward. I am not yours, not anymore. The officer's voice turned sharp. You carry mission-sensitive code. You belong to the Empire. Joel's voice turned low. No, she belongs to herself. The Ilari gave one final warning. Surrender in 1 hour, or be taken by force. The screen went black, silence returned. Joel looked at Kareen. What do you want to do? She didn't answer. She walked away. In her room, Kareen stared into the mirror. The face that looked back wasn't the same girl who had been left in the sand. She had scars now. Strength. Memories. She reached into her bag and pulled out her old unit badge, shiny, cracked, and sharp on the edges. She threw it into the trash. Then she pulled out a new one, handmade, from scraps of Joel's tools. Simple, ugly, perfect. It said, Crew. Back in the cockpit, Joel prepped weapons. They were low on fuel, low on power, one tiny ship against a royal cruiser. It wasn't a battle, it was suicide. But when Kareen returned, she had her choice written all over her face. I'm not running anymore, she said, and I'm not surrendering. Joel nodded once. Then we fight. The hour passed. The Ilari ship returned, silent, massive, deadly. They launched a small boarding pod. Joel braced for impact. The ship shook. Claws gripped the hull, then the metal hissed open. Kareen waited near the airlock with a plasma blade. In hand, Joel beside her with a blaster. The first soldier stepped inside and Kareen struck first. The fight was fast and brutal. She moved like a storm, no longer silent, no longer holding back. Joel covered her from behind, shooting with sharp aim together. They held the corridor until a second wave pushed through. Too many. Kareen was pulled down by 2 soldiers. One tried to inject her with a restraining drug. Then, a flash of red. Joel tackled them, got hit, hard, fell. Kareen saw him fall. Her voice broke. Something Joel had never heard before. No! She snapped, tore free, flipped the injector, hit the override on the airlock. Wind screamed. The soldiers were thrown backward, sucked into the pod. She hit the close button, sealed the door. Silence. Joel groaned. Kareen rushed to his side. You're hurt, he smiled weakly. Worth it. Later, as the Ilari ship retreated, damaged, humiliated, and still without their prize, Kareen sat by Joel's bedside. He looked up at her. You saved me. She shook her head. No. This time, I saved us. Joel touched her hand. You sure this is the life you want? She smiled. For the first time. It was full. Free. Alive. I don't want to go back to who I was, she said. I want to become who I was meant to be. With you. And out in the void, the Dustwalker turned toward a new course. Not toward revenge, but toward a future neither of them thought they'd have. A week passed. The Dustwalker floated above a calm gas giant, its rings glowing with soft light. Inside the ship, the repairs were done, the weapons recharged, and the silence. Comfortable. Joel stood in the engine bay, wiping grease off his hands. A small drone buzzed around his head. Kareen sat on a bench nearby, legs crossed, fixing a cracked sensor panel. She wasn't in chains anymore. She wasn't hiding in corners. She looked like she belonged. Joel glanced over. You know, he said, you don't have to keep fixing everything. I've got this. Kareen didn't even look up. You missed a leak in the coolant line. Joel raised a brow. Okay, maybe you do belong here. She gave him a small, quiet smile. Later, they stood at the back of the ship, watching the stars. No alarms. No threats, just peace. Joel handed her a metal box. What's this? She asked. Open it. Inside was a small badge. Silver, scratched, handmade. But this one wasn't a joke. It had a name carved in it. Kareen, crew, family, partner. She stared at it for a long time, then softly. Why would you make this for me? Joel looked at her. Because you've been through fire. You didn't break. You didn't run. You stayed. She looked up. Her eyes shimmered. No one's ever given me something like this. He smiled. Get used to it. That night, Karine placed the badge beside her bed, next to the broken collar, the one Joel had removed back in the desert. One chain was meant to hold her down. The other, it was forged in trust. The next morning, Karine stood at the main control panel. Joel blinked sleepily as he walked in. Wow, you're flying now? She looked back, calm. I studied your routes. I know how to avoid patrol zones. I even found a shortcut. Joel chuckled. I leave the seat warm for 2 seconds and suddenly you're captain. She didn't laugh. She just said quietly, maybe we share it. Joel sat beside her. Their hands brushed over the control switches. Not by accident. Later, on a quiet planet called Daria's Reach, Joel walked through the market. He returned to the ship carrying fruit, parts, and a shiny scarf. Karine raised an eyebrow. What's this? Color, he said. You wear too much black. She smirked. I was hiding. He smiled back. Not anymore. She draped the scarf over her shoulders without a word. But her eyes, they sparkled. As the Dustwalker prepared for its next jump, Karine looked out the window at the stars. She spoke without turning around. Back then, I thought the chains made me weak. Joel looked up from the console. They didn't. She nodded. Now I know. The person who broke them made me strong. Joel paused, then answered, You were always strong. You just needed someone to remind you. She sat beside him. Their fingers touched, gently. No more fear, no more running. Just two souls in motion, bound not by war, not by pain, but by something deeper. Choice. As the Dustwalker jumped into the stars, Karine looked ahead, no longer haunted by the past. She wasn't a prisoner. She wasn't property. She wasn't a tool. She was Karine, crew, partner, family, and finally, free, final line, narration style. She was left in chains, but at the human gave her freedom, not with force, not with weapons, but with the one thing she had never known before, trust.